Hello, my name is Jack, and now we're going to look at another heinous case with you. Mexico City police officers discover human remains on November 6, 2014. A portion of the torso was discovered in a vacant lot near the city's exit. Bags with limbs and legs were discovered in various locations of the capital a few days later. The authorities were alerted by the horrific reality that there were no digits on the limbs. A particularly vicious criminal was apparently at work in the area. Officers were gathered in squads and combed the streets. The major purpose was to find the unlucky man's head and limbs and prevent further crimes. At the time, everyone was certain that this was the work of a heinous serial killer. The fingers in the head were never discovered. However, it was confirmed that the bones belonged to the same person thanks to the competent work of forensic experts. However, because to the lack of fingers and teeth, it was impossible to determine who this individual was. The story takes place in North America, with the main character, Alejandra Lafuente, a fiery brunette with magnificent hair and piercing brown eyes that emphasize her thick black as tar lashes. He tried to keep her athletic physique trim by doing fitness, yoga, and breathing exercises. Alexandra enjoys taking care of herself. She was frequently seen at a beauty salon, massage parlor, or spa. During the summer, she sat on the beach performing scientific work and went to tanning salons on cloudy days. In general, we can say that the young woman adored herself and saw herself as the pinnacle of female attractiveness. Alejandra did not lag behind, and her father is a doctor of sciences, a well-known psychiatrist named Alberto de Fuente. He is a scientific luminary who works on psychiatric diseases such as schizophrenia and manic depression. And he is well known not only for his scientific work, but also for his patient experiments. Alexandra regarded her father as a hero. She followed in his footsteps in order to achieve the same level of success. To accomplish this, she enrolled at the best psychiatric university and graduated with honors. Her determination, resourcefulness, outstanding brilliance, and her father's connections all aided her in writing and defending her thesis on manic depression. However, Alexandra did not pursue psychiatry in the future since she was drawn to the work of a psychotherapist. With the help of her father's money, the young woman obtained a license and set up shop in a new business area in the heart of the capital. There was no shortage of clients, but she only saw women. Women who came for counseling had eating disorders, depression, interpersonal problems, and low self-esteem. Alejandra assisted in resolving family issues. However, as is often the case, her personal life left much to be desired. Her first marriage ended in divorce, but the couple had 2 children, 2 gorgeous girls with Alexandra's eyes and her father's sense of humor. Alexandra, on the other hand, was undeterred. 2 children, in her opinion, were no excuse to give up on herself. She hoped to meet her other half, a man who might be a decent parent to her girls. After the couple divorced, Alexandra's ex-husband, whose identity was not divulged, returned home. It was standard procedure for the couple. The father would visit on weekends to spend time with his daughters and assist his ex-wife with domestic tasks as needed. However, the ex-husband had no idea that this would be his last visit. Alejandra requested that he access the house through the backyard because the lock on the front door was jammed. The man walked into the house. Alejandra explained that her youngest daughter was showering and invited him into the bathroom. The man went in there, not suspecting anything. The home was deafeningly silent. There were no sounds, no cartoons, no children's laughter. The dad entered the bathroom, where there was tape on the floor and no daughter in the filled bathtub. He began to notice that something was awry. Right at that moment, his ex-wife appeared behind him with a hammer and administered a powerful blow to his head, followed by another. The man collapsed, blood flowing from the large hole in his skull. Everything around him was blood-splattered. According to the experts, the man had little hope of saving himself. After the initial blow with a hefty blunt object, death occurred almost quickly. The eldest daughter, who had suddenly returned from a friend's house early, became an inadvertent witness to this very awful picture. Alejandra was considered to be mentally disturbed after the children frequently observed their parents' quarrels. She frequently took it out on her friends, and some of them even observed how the young woman might attack her spouse. They frequently observed scratches on his arms and neck. The housemates, on the other hand, were constantly on the lookout for her outbursts and poor behavior. But this time, everything got out of hand. The girl bolted from the house and began calling for help. Almost immediately, a neighbor alerted the cops, and the psychologist was arrested and charged with murder. The young woman was taken to the police and kept in a cell for a month until her first hearing. Alejandra denied her guilt during the trial. Lawyers proposed a form of self-defense. According to them, Alexandra's ex-husband was extremely jealous of her and cooked up a story about her bringing males into the house, which might have a terrible impact on the mentality of young girls. On the actual day of the crime, he unexpectedly turned up at his ex-wife's house and entered through the back door, intending to find her with another man. Then he jumped on Alexandra, who was in the bathroom putting together a nightstand at the time. She was then forced to defend herself, and he dealt 2 hits to the back of her ex-husband's skull. The punishment was handed down on June 14, 2012, taking into account the defense's evidence and the presence of 2 small children. Alejandra was sentenced to a year and 4 months in prison. Thanks to the combined efforts of lawyers and his father's funds, a suspended sentence replaced the term behind bars. A few months later, the appeal was submitted again, this time with a request to dismiss the charges. The defense was self-defense, and human rights campaigners demanded a jury trial because they felt terrible for the poor woman who was presented at trial as a victim of domestic violence. As a result, the court reconsidered the case and found the defendant not guilty. After her release, the young woman continued to provide her with psychological counseling, creating an image of a victim of gender inequality who fought for her rights like most women in North America. And finally, this created image made Alejandra even more popular to potential clients. Soon after, Maria Alejandra met Alan Carrera Cuella, the son of Adrian Carrera Francis, a large Mexican industrialist. He was a tall, attractive, and statuesque man. His father had previously served as the Central District's head of special services and had achieved tremendous success in his career. Soon after, Alan expanded his firm and established a nationwide chain of building supply outlets. Alan's business was legalized in part. However, the second half, which few people were aware of, was strongly related to crime. By the way, it was for this reason that his father was fired when one of his son's financial scams was discovered. In addition, Alan was a member of a criminal organization involved in the transit of psychoactive chemicals to the United States. Their base was in a border town, and it was guarded by hired police officers. This organization was in charge of a minor fraction of the South's psychoactive substance trafficking. Alan's father was found to be involved in his son's dealings, and the police were able to obtain a statement from him. Thus, he faced a 20-year prison sentence. However, Adrian Carrera was released early on July 18, 2000, courtesy to the Witness Protection Program. He devoted his entire time following his release to his son and his genuine business. The boy soon adopted his father's beliefs and experiences as he grew up. Alan Carrera chose to follow in his father's footsteps and become an entrepreneur after graduating from college. He was highly interested in the store of domestic appliances, which, despite his young age, he entirely let himself. This business was not as huge as his father's, but it paid well. There were always a lot of ladies around him, but Alan had always been in love with a classmate whom he took as his wife since she was smart, gorgeous, and from a good background. The marriage was brief but memorable. Daddy had a lovely daughter. However, a lot of work and Alan's virtually continuous absence from home caused this marriage to end in divorce. Alan found it exceedingly difficult to let go of a woman he had loved since high school. New novels did not bring joy, and loneliness and melancholy drove the man to begin drinking. This gradually turned into a bad habit, in an attempt to cope with long-term depression and an addiction to alcohol. Alan attempted numerous methods, including books, AA meetings, and drips, until fate led him to a consultation with the famed psychiatrist Alberto, the father of Maria Alejandra Allen, who was also going through a painful divorce. Alan was the young woman's only male companion opted to see a therapist in order to alleviate her loneliness. Alan was rehabilitated by a psychiatrist who indicated that he could not leave both spouses for ethical reasons and so advised the woman to turn to Alejandra. It is worth noting, however, that he did not notify the clients that Alexandra was his daughter, and Alexandra quickly realized that her patient's ex-husband may be a good match. He was described as a lovely man in his prime who was also fairly wealthy. Alexandra quickly requested that the client bring her ex-husband for another consultation. According to the therapist, she would be able to address their problem in one session and dissolve the former spouse's tight bond. Alejandra began putting her strategy to lure the entrepreneur into action within the first few minutes of the hot encounter. The outcome came quickly. For the sake of propriety, Alan offered the therapist a cup of coffee immediately following the appointment to address family difficulties. The young woman first refused to go on a date because it was against medical ethics. But the date, which took place on the same evening, swiftly turned into an affair. Alan's ex-wife soon found out about it. She was taken aback. She even intended to notify the doctor's ethical committee about the occurrence. She, however, did not. Alexandra was a very good specialist, thus she was able to persuade her client to drop the case. After all, it implies envy and a refusal to let go of the former spouse. As a result, a bright future, according to the doctor, will not function. Alan's ex-wife chose not to apply to the commission, but the sessions had already ended. Meanwhile, the friendship with the newlywed couple grew quickly. The young people chose to live together a few months after their first date. They decided to legitimize their relationship after 2 more months. But Alan had no idea what skeletons in his closet were hiding his fiancée. What were the causes for her divorce from her ex-husband? Alan decided to visit his folks in April 2014 and flew there for the weekend. It became an excellent opportunity to discuss his beloved and the upcoming wedding. Alan's parents were taken aback at how late they discovered such a significant event. They had never heard of Alexandra before in their son's life, which was weird. The marriage was registered a week after the meeting with the parents. Interestingly, Alexandra requested that her husband not contact her friends and relatives, and no invitations were sent. The wedding was planned to be small, and the budget did not allow for everyone to be invited. However, as it came out later, the bride's father did attend the wedding ceremony. At first, the young family's existence appeared to be a fairy tale. Young, content, and full of goals and desires. However, it did not survive long. Alexandra's frantic character could not be hidden as the story nears its tragic conclusion. But no one suspects it yet. The couple's relationship began to shift radically. Alan was a pretty secretive person who did not disclose personal details with his pals. As a result, nothing was known about what was going on behind the couple's closed doors. However, it was clear that the couple's previous connection had cracked, and they no longer appeared to be in love. Alan cut himself off from his family after meeting Alexandra. The wedding, to which parents were not invited, was the final straw. They even stopped phoning each other after that. Alan's remaining friends began to observe that his wife was becoming increasingly tense, occasionally acting inappropriately, and easily losing her anger. Alan felt embarrassed after a couple of such situations and decided to limit joint meetings. Family squabbles happened on a daily basis, and they were virtually always unjustified. Alejandra, according to her own evidence, decided to break into her husband's cell phone one evening. As is customary, correspondence with some ladies was discovered with racy content. Of course, turning a blind eye to such things was impossible. This, according to Alexandra, was the final straw. She testified in court that her husband had beaten, insulted, and humiliated her in every manner conceivable. When the adultery was uncovered, it was fruitless to try to save the marriage. For reasons unclear, Alexandra attempted to save the relationship without using typical psychotherapy procedures. After considering her husband's infidelity, the young woman decided to deal with Alan using a way she was previously familiar with. She made this decision right away. Her entire emphasis could be on devising the perfect murder scheme. Meanwhile, Alan went about his customary and measured routine. He had no idea what was in store for him. Alan continued to communicate infrequently with his family. He couldn't, however, miss the family's yearly feast in honor of his adored grandfather's birthday. Alan, of course, attended the celebration, but his parents made it apparent that his wife was not the most welcome visitor in their home. This event irritated Alexandra and exacerbated the couple's relationship. Was it feasible that today would be the final time Alan's family saw him alive, on the 31st of October 2014? Alan's phone was last used to notify his family that he had returned home safely after his birthday party. He hasn't contacted me since. He had also not been seen at work in a few days. This was unusual because it had never happened before. The entrepreneur took great pride in his job, and shortly the opening of a new store was anticipated, and the presence of the head was simply required. The reason for this was the spouse's terrible plan, which she carried out. After Alan returned from his vacation, there was another controversy, and Alejandra decided to divorce her husband right away. She mixed a potent sleeping tablet into the milky drink that was typically consumed before retiring to bed. She then suffocated him with a pillow. She took pleasure in watching her spouse gradually lose consciousness in a pitiful attempt to remove the cushion and take a breath. Then came the most difficult part, getting rid of the body. She hadn't had time to prepare for this moment. She had to make do with what she had since Alan was too heavy. Time was running out. Alexandra dashed over to her neighbor's vegetable patch to retrieve an electric saw. She slashed her husband's body into pieces with a nasty look on her face, Only a true sadist would do something like this. Then she placed the body pieces into rubbish bags, cutting off fingers and pulling teeth. These would aid the investigators in identifying the person if the body was discovered. Alejandra placed all of the bags into luggage in order to remove the dead from the house without drawing suspicion, but she was unsuccessful. Alexandra was unable to leave the house with the bag unobserved as morning approached. From her window, an elderly neighbor who suffered from insomnia observed her. She was surprised by the young woman's early departure. Moreover, for some reason, her husband did not assist in lifting the heavier baggage, and Alexandra was acting suspiciously. She was constantly glancing around. Alexandra returned home at daybreak. This surprised the vigilant neighbor even more, as it would subsequently be revealed that she had dispersed bags of her ex-husband's remains in various communities in order to cover her tracks. She resumed her customary routine as the new day began. On November 6, 2014, Mexican police officials made the first horrible discovery: a human body with no teeth and no fingers on the hand. The entire police force was put on high alert since the crime was so heinous in its ferocity. Other body pieces were discovered in various sections of the city less than a day later. It's also worth noting that the distance between the locations where the parcels were discovered was fairly considerable. This is what would be attributed to Allah after hundreds of years away from home. All of the body pieces were taken to the greatest forensic laboratory, where scientists immediately determined that they all belonged to the same victim. To keep herself from being suspected, the offender began sending communications to Alan's family. She tried to avoid suspicion, but she just made matters worse. She had no idea her spouse had suddenly alienated himself from the family and had stopped communicating with his relatives. Alan's parents were informed by Alejandra that they were going on vacation and would be unavailable. Alexandra's father destroyed the entire plan. Alberto began calling Alan's father's house, wanting to know if his son-in-law's family knew where Alexandra was. Alberto hadn't heard from her in a long time, and the patients are concerned about their inability to attend counseling sessions. Later, he calls Alan's relatives to notify them that his daughter has been found and that she has been forced admitted to the clinic owing to sadness caused by her husband's adultery. This terrified the relatives, and they attempted unsuccessfully to locate Alan. Finally, the businessman's family turned to the authorities. The laboratory experts chose to match the recently discovered corpse's characteristics to Alan's. The similarity was 100%, and his relatives also identified him. It was very difficult for Alan's grandfather immediately following the identification. Because he was his only grandson, he had heart trouble. Alan's house and office were searched by the investigation. A fresh earth mound was discovered in the house's backyard. The man's fingers and teeth were recovered after digging. The discovery stunned the capital city even more. Alejandra was captured right away. Blood was also discovered in one of the rooms, as well as on the car's trunk and in the garage. Alejandra initially sought to deny her culpability. She hoped she'd be able to get away with it as easily as she did with her former marriage. However, the probe soon resolved the matter. The evidence of an elderly witness was beneficial. Alan's anticipated time of death coincided with the time she gave. Alexandria utilized her position to secure a potent sleeping medicine that only a doctor could obtain. This compounded the situation. The evidence gathered aided in establishing a link between Alexandria and her husband's horrible murder. CCTV cameras also assisted in determining that the man went into the property and never returned. CCTV footage also confirmed that the baggage had been removed. On December 10, 2014, the jury returned its judgment, and Alejandra was sentenced to life in prison for murder with cruelty and attempting to conceal this fact through the use of an official position. All of this worked against the former psychotherapist and her father, who sought to save his daughter's life through connections and bribery, couldn't help either. But all he managed to do was keep the trial hidden from the public and the press in order to prevent more attention. He did it all, however, for the benefit of his own career. Nobody else will go to a professional who reared such a vicious monster and couldn't diagnose problems with his own daughter in time. During the trial, the case of Alejandra's first husband came to mind. However, due to the passage of time, no proof in this case was discovered. Alejandra's father's complicity in what occurred was also considered. There were allegations that he was working with his daughter and that they committed crimes for scientific reasons. However, there was no evidence to support this theory. After several victims' pleas, the punishment was commuted to death. This is a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence. Such sentences are quite uncommon in Mexico, particularly in these times. The defendant is also not entitled to have the matter reviewed. The accused's home and all of his goods must be given to the victim's family. However, who can be consoled if the individual can no longer be brought back? Alejandra appeared to be a pragmatic and nasty woman. She had serious mental health concerns, despite medical testing denying it. She was likewise influenced by her father and utilized her official position to carry out her irrational plans. Impunity for her first crime had only fueled her rage. Alexandra believed she was invincible and continued to do evil. Alan may still be alive if this nasty woman hadn't been acquitted the first time, but it was too late to discuss it now. Thank you for taking the time to watch. Subscribe to the channel while Jack was with you. There will be several surprising stories ahead. I'll see you later.